Let us journey together into the deepest corridors of time, back to moments when life on Earth stood on the knife's edge of existence. This is not a journey to frighten you, but to humble you, to remind you that the story of life is one of extraordinary resilience, and that you, here now, breathing gently in the darkness, are the inheritor of billions of years of survival. By the time this journey ends, you will understand something profound about our place in the cosmos, and you will drift into the most peaceful sleep you have ever known. More than 99% of all species that have ever lived on this planet are now extinct. Let that number settle into your mind for a moment. Every dinosaur that ever walked the ancient forests, every massive creature that swam through primordial seas, every strange and beautiful organism that ever existed under distant suns, 99% of them are gone. And yet, somehow, life persisted. Life found ways to survive, to adapt, to flourish again in the aftermath of catastrophe. As you listen now, you are part of that unbroken chain of survival, stretching back through hundreds of millions of years. Today, we explore the darkest chapters in this story, the 5 great mass extinctions that have reshaped life on Earth. We will walk through the last 5 minutes of worlds that no longer exist. We will see what the creatures of those distant times might have witnessed in their final moments, and we will emerge on the other side with a greater appreciation for the fragile miracle of the life that surrounds us today. Before we begin, take a deep breath. Let your shoulders relax, let your eyes grow heavy. There is nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to be. Simply let my voice carry you through the corridors of deep time, and when your mind wanders, let it wander freely. The details will settle into place on their own, and even if they don't, that is perfectly fine. You are safe. You are here, and the story we are about to tell has been told countless times across the vast expanse of geological ages, waiting for this very moment, waiting for you. Let us begin at the end, or rather, at one of the most famous ends in all of Earth's history. 66 million years ago, a world teemed with life. Dinosaurs of every shape and size dominated the landscapes of every continent. Great oceans were filled with marine reptiles and vast schools of fish. Flying reptiles glided through humid skies. Mammals, small and secretive, lived in the shadows of their giant neighbors, not yet knowing that they would soon inherit the Earth. The morning began like any other. The sun rose over what is now the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, casting its warm light across tropical forests and shallow seas. Triceratops grazed on flowering plants along riverbanks. Tyrannosaurs stalked prey through dense vegetation. Pterosaurs soared on thermal currents, their wings casting shadows across the landscape below. In the oceans, mosasaurs hunted ammonites and fish, unaware that their world was about to change forever. What they could not see, what no creature on Earth could see coming, was a rock from space, an asteroid or comet perhaps 10 kilometers wide, hurtling toward them at tens of thousands of miles per hour. It had traveled through the darkness of interplanetary space for millions of years, perhaps billions, a wandering wanderer destined to meet its end on this small blue world. In the final seconds before impact, the sky would have brightened dramatically as the object compressed the air ahead of it into a superheated plasma. But there was no time to react, no warning systems to sound, no way to comprehend what was about to happen. The impact occurred near what is now the town of Chicxulub, Puerto, Mexico. The asteroid struck with the force of billions of nuclear bombs, releasing energy equivalent to more than 10 billion Hiroshima atomic bombs in a single instant. The ground beneath it did not explode outward so much as it was instantaneously converted into a liquid, a plasma, a superheated vapor that expanded into a massive fireball visible from halfway around the world. The asteroid itself was destroyed completely, converted instantly into the very energy that would reshape the planet. Within the first seconds, everything within 1,000 kilometers was simply annihilated. The dinosaurs closest to the impact site, within perhaps 500 miles, were killed almost instantaneously by the blast wave, a wall of superheated air that would have stripped flesh from bone in an instant. The sound of the impact was so loud that it echoed around the entire planet, a roar that no living thing had ever heard before, and that no living thing would hear again. The effects that followed unfolded over minutes, hours, days, and ultimately years. Within minutes, the sky filled with debris ejected from the impact crater, molten rock, shattered stone, and pulverized earth thrown so high into the atmosphere that some of it entered suborbital trajectories and rained down across the entire planet. This re-entering debris heated the atmosphere to such a degree that the surface of the Earth essentially became an oven. Grasslands and forests ignited across continents. Wildfires swept across vast stretches of North America, South America, Europe, and Asia simultaneously. Any creature too large to shelter underground, any creature that could not find water or some protected microhabitat, was cooked alive. In the oceans, tsunamis hundreds of meters high radiated outward from the impact site, devastating coastlines around the entire Gulf of Mexico and eventually striking shores across the Atlantic. Ships, had there been any, would have been tossed like toys. Coastal ecosystems were obliterated. The violence of those first hours was absolute and total, of everything that had come before. And yet, as terrible as those first hours were, the worst was still to come. The dust and aerosols injected into the atmosphere by the impact, and the wildfires remained suspended for months, perhaps years. Sunlight was blocked from reaching the surface of the earth. Temperatures plummeted, photosynthesis ground to a halt. The base of the food chain collapsed. Plant life died. The herbivores that depended on plants died. The carnivores that depended on herbivores died. It was a cascading failure of planetary proportions, a chain reaction of extinction that rippled through every ecosystem on Earth. The great dinosaurs, those lords of the Mesozoic world, were among the casualties. T-Rex, Triceratops, Velociraptors, Spinosaurs, Hadrosaurs, Pterosaurs, all gone within a geological eye blink. The marine reptiles that had ruled the seas for millions of years, plesiosaurs, mosasaurs, plesiosaurs, vanished completely. The ammonites, those beautiful spiral-shelled creatures that had floated through ancient seas for hundreds of millions of years, mostly died out. The rudest bivalves that had built reef ecosystems across tropical seas were extinguished entirely. In total, approximately 75% of all species on Earth perished in the mass extinction we now call the K-PG event, the boundary between the Cretaceous and Paleogene periods. Among the victims were the non-avian dinosaurs, forever etched into human consciousness as the icons of a lost world. But among the survivors were small mammals, tiny creatures no larger than mice, perhaps, that sheltered in burrows and ate insects and seeds. They had no idea that they had just become the most important animals on Earth, the seeds of everything that would come next, including us. As the darkness lifted over months and years, as the dust settled and the sun's light returned to the surface of the Earth, life began to rebuild itself. New ecosystems emerged, filled first by generalists, by scavengers, by creatures that could survive on almost anything. In the absence of the great dinosaurs, the small mammals began to diversify, to grow, to fill every niche that had been vacated. Within a few million years, a mere in geological terms, the Earth was teeming with new forms of life, mammals of every description radiating into the spaces left behind by extinction. One particular lineage of small, tree-dwelling primates would eventually give rise to apes, to hominids, to Homo sapiens, to you. But the K-PG extinction was not the worst. It was not even close to the worst. There was an event even more catastrophic, an extinction so devastating that scientists have called it the Great Dying, and it remains the most destructive extinction event in Earth's history. This was the Permian-Triassic extinction, and it came much closer to ending life on Earth entirely. Let us travel back now, far further than before, to approximately 252 million years ago. The world of the late Permian period was a strange and alien place compared to our own. All of Earth's continents were gathered together into a single landmass called Pangaea, surrounded by a vast ocean called Panthalassa. The climate was generally warmer and drier than today, with vast deserts covering the interior of the supercontinent. And yet, despite these differences, life had never been more abundant or more diverse. The seas were filled with trilobites, those ancient arthropods that had survived for hundreds of millions of years. Coral reefs built not by the hexacorals we know today, but by different groups entirely, housed vast communities of marine life. On land, strange reptiles and amphibian-like creatures dominated, including the ancestors of what would later become dinosaurs and mammals. The world was rich, teeming, flourishing in ways that would have been unimaginable in the billions of years before complex life had emerged. The extinction began, most scientists believe, with a series of massive volcanic eruptions in what is now Siberia. These eruptions, known as the Siberian traps, spewed enormous quantities of lava, ash, and gases into the atmosphere over a period of perhaps 1 million years. The effects were catastrophic. Carbon dioxide levels spiked, causing global warming. Methane, trapped in permafrost and ocean sediments, was released, amplifying the greenhouse effect. The oceans lost oxygen, becoming stagnant and acidic. Entire marine ecosystems collapsed as the chemistry of the seas changed beyond the tolerance of most life forms. The sequence of events, as scientists have reconstructed them, was something like this. First came the volcanic eruptions, a slow but relentless assault on the atmosphere that warmed the planet over thousands of years. Then came the methane release, a sudden amplification that pushed temperatures even higher. The oceans heated, circulation patterns changed, and deep oxygen-poor waters rose toward the surface. Hydrogen sulfide, a toxic gas produced by anaerobic bacteria in these low oxygen conditions, built up in the oceans and eventually vented into the atmosphere, poisoning everything that breathed it. At the peak of the crisis, the oceans became so oxygen-depleted that nothing could survive in them. Layers of anoxic water spread across the seafloor. Mass extinctions rippled through marine ecosystems, species dying faster than new ones could evolve to replace them. On land, the situation was equally dire. Plants died as the climate became too harsh. Animals died as their food sources vanished. The great amphibian dynasties that had ruled the Permian world were decimated. The massive insect families that had flourished for tens of millions of years were reduced to shadows of their former diversity. What would the last 5 minutes have been like for a creature living through this apocalypse? It is almost impossible to imagine. Perhaps for a trilobite, something like a large horseshoe crab-like arthropod that had survived since the Cambrian. The end came slowly as the waters around it became increasingly toxic, as oxygen levels dropped towards zero, as the hydrogen sulfide that had built up in the depths suddenly reached the shallows where it lived. It might have felt a burning sensation as the gas poisoned its system. It might have seen other creatures dying around it, floating to the surface, becoming food for anaerobic bacteria that produced more and more poison. There would have been no escape, nowhere to flee, no adaptation that could save it from the invisible threat filling the water. On land, conditions were little better. The air itself may have been poisonous in some regions, thick with hydrogen sulfide that smelled of rotten eggs and burned the lungs of any creature that breathed it. The sky may have taken on an eerie greenish hue, a color that has been detected in geological deposits from this period, caused by the high concentrations of sulfur compounds in the atmosphere. The sun may have been barely visible through the haze, a dim red orb casting weak light over a dying world. In those final minutes, or perhaps final days or weeks, for the crisis unfolded over longer periods than the asteroid impact, entire lineages of life that had survived for hundreds of millions of years simply ceased to exist. The trilobites, those survivors of the Cambrian explosion, those witnesses to more than 300 million years of Earth's history, finally perished completely. The giant insects of the Carboniferous, the meganeuras with their meter-wide wingspans, the arthropleura that grew to 2 meters in length, faded into extinction. The dinocephalians and other strange therapsids that had dominated Permian ecosystems were almost entirely wiped out. The great reef systems of the late Permian, built by different organisms than today's corals, were annihilated so completely that it would take millions of years for new reefs to establish themselves in their absence. The statistics of this catastrophe are almost beyond comprehension. Approximately 96% of all marine species died. Approximately 70% of all terrestrial vertebrate species died. Perhaps 90% of all life on Earth perished during this single event. It took life on Earth approximately 10 million years to recover to pre-extinction levels of diversity, and the ecosystems that emerged were fundamentally different from what had come before. The age of the great marine reptiles and the bizarre terrestrial megafauna of the Permian was over. The age of the dinosaurs was about to begin. Yet even this was not the end of the story. The Permian extinction was severe, but it was not unique. Throughout Earth's history, there have been 5 great mass extinctions, each reshaping the course of evolution in profound ways. There was the Ordovician extinction approximately 445 million years ago, when a sudden glaciation wiped out approximately 85% of marine species. There was the Devonian extinction approximately 375 million years ago, which devastated marine ecosystems and eliminated many lineages of fish. There was the Triassic-Jurassic extinction approximately 200 million years ago, which paved the way for the age of dinosaurs. Each of these events was a reset, a clearing of the ecological slate that allowed new forms of life to emerge and flourish. The dinosaurs that ruled the world for 165 million years existed because the Permian extinction created the conditions for their ancestors to diversify. The mammals that eventually gave rise to humanity existed because the K-PG extinction eliminated the dinosaurs that had kept them small and marginal for tens of millions of years. We are here, in other words, because of extinction, because of catastrophe, because of the 5 great die-offs that have punctuated the history of life on Earth. And extinction, we now understand, is not merely a thing of the past. We are living through what many scientists believe is a 6th mass extinction, this one caused not by asteroid impacts or volcanic eruptions, but by human activity. The rate at which species are disappearing today rivals or exceeds the rates of the great historical extinctions. Deforestation, habitat destruction, climate change, pollution, overexploitation. All of these pressures are driving species to extinction faster than at any time since the dinosaurs died. The passenger pigeon, the dodo, the thylacine, the golden toad, each of these represents a thread pulled from the tapestry of life, a unique experiment in evolution that will never be repeated. But here, in this moment, in this gentle darkness, we need not dwell on the crises of our own making. Here we can simply appreciate the extraordinary fortune that brought us to this point, the billions of years of survival and adaptation and extinction and recovery that made our existence possible. Every organism that has ever lived, including every one of our ancestors stretching back through the mists of deep time, survived something, outlasted something, persisted through some challenge that killed others of their kind. We are, each one of us, the product of an unbroken chain of survival stretching back to the very first living cells that emerged on this planet more than 3.5 billion years ago. As you drift deeper now, let this knowledge settle over you like a warm blanket. You are not separate from this story. You are not an accident, not an afterthought, not a cosmic coincidence. You are the inevitable result of 3.8 billion years of survival, of reproduction, of adaptation, of extinction and recovery and evolution. Every extinction event that preceded you was necessary for your existence. Every species that died was a stepping stone, a clearing of the way, a preparation for what would come next, and what came next eventually was you. The creatures that perished in those ancient cataclysms did not know that their deaths would lead to anything. The dinosaurs did not know, in those final minutes of the Cretaceous, that their extinction would eventually make room for mammals, for primates, for hominids, for humans. The trilobites did not know, as they struggled in those poisoned Permian seas, that their demise would create opportunities for new forms of life that would eventually crawl onto land and breathe air and grow large and intelligent. Extinction, for the organisms that experience it, is always an ending. But in the grand story of life on Earth, it is also always a beginning. Perhaps in some strange way, we can find comfort in this. The challenges we face today, climate change, environmental destruction, the loss of biodiversity are serious, perhaps existentially serious, but they are not without precedent. Life on Earth has faced catastrophe before, multiple times, and it has always recovered. It has always found new forms, new adaptations, new ways of thriving in the aftermath of disaster. Whether humanity will be part of that future remains to be seen. But life itself, the great story that began with simple cells in ancient oceans, will almost certainly continue in some form long after we are gone. We are not the point of it all. We are merely a chapter, a fascinating and perhaps significant chapter, but a chapter nonetheless. Let that thought carry you now into the deepest peace you have ever known. You are part of something vast and ancient and resilient. You are connected, through every cell in your body, through every breath you take, to the first living things that ever existed on this world. You are connected to the survivors of every extinction, the ancestors of every lineage that managed to persist through ice ages and volcanic winters and asteroid impacts and all the other challenges that life has faced across the billions of years of Earth's history. You belong here. You have always belonged here. And the story that made you will continue long after you are gone, carrying forward the legacy of billions of years of survival. Sleep now. Let the weight of that knowledge settle over you like a warm and gentle darkness. There is nothing more you need to understand, nothing more you need to remember. The dinosaurs are gone. The trilobites are gone. The ammonites and the dodo and the passenger pigeon and countless millions of other species are gone. But life goes on and you are part of it, and that is enough. That has always been enough. Rest now. Dream of ancient seas and primordial forests, of strange creatures swimming through warm waters, of giant reptiles basking in tropical suns. Dream of the long, slow recovery that always follows catastrophe, of new forms of life emerging to fill every empty niche, of the resilience that has carried life through 5 great extinctions and will carry it through whatever comes next. Good night and sleep well. You have earned your rest. We all have.